Okay, alrighty. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining the Long Beach Public Library and Reference Solutions for this small business workshop. Today we're gonna go over a digital resource in our digital library called Reference Solutions, and we're joined by Bill Carlson from Data Axle Reference Solutions. So before we get started, just so everyone knows, the session is being recorded and will be sent to registrants after the event. And we're also having live translation provided. So I'm gonna have Jaime go ahead and share with us how to do that for yourself.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Hello, we will make this announcement in English and in Spanish. We invite everybody to select their language of choice and be part of this multilingual space. Please select English if you have limited proficiency in Spanish. This way, you will be able to hear the interpreters from the other languages into English. If you are on the computer at the bottom, you will see the globe that says interpretation. Put a check mark on the English in order to listen to the entire presentation in English. If you're on a cell phone or tablet, locate the three dots, put a check mark on English and hit done. Make sure to click on done as this will activate and begin the interpretation. Unfortunately, interpretation will not work on Chromebooks or if you're dialing into a meeting. Please make sure your Zoom app is updated. Presenters, please speak at a moderate pace. We do use about 20 to 30% more words to interpret the same message into another language. Also, if you see an interpreter raise their virtual hand, this is a reminder to slow down. Now I will announce the instructions into Spanish. Hola, les invitamos a todos a seleccionar su idioma de preferencia para poder formar parte de este espacio multilingüe. Seleccione el español si está limitado en su dominio del inglés. De esta manera podrá escuchar al intérprete del inglés al español. Si está en su computadora, hay un globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla que dice interpretación, donde podrá seleccionar español. Ponga una palomita en español para poder escuchar toda la presentación al español. Si está usando su celular o tableta, ubique los tres puntitos y ponga una palomita en español y seleccione Done o finalizar. Seleccionar Done o finalizar es muy importante para activar la interpretación. Lamentablemente, la interpretación no funciona con Chromebooks o si llamó para ingresar a la reunión de Zoom. Asegúrese de actualizar su aplicación. Gracias.
Nicole, we can't hear you.
Oops, sorry. I was just saying I'm gonna add Jaime as the interpreter. And so before we get started, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our digital library. So if you're not aware, the digital library is a free resource from the Long Beach Public Library. It can be found on our website at lbpl.org, or the URL is at the bottom of this slide, longbeach.gov/library/digital-library. And this is the home for all of our digital resources, many which we have business and career resources, which includes reference solutions. So as long as you have a library card, you're able to log into these resources and use them freely. And with that, I'll hand it over to Bill. Let me go ahead and make you a host again.
Okay.
And okay, that should be good.
I'm ready to go. Yeah, I'm sharing now. Are you seeing the reference solutions database clearly? Excellent. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Bill Carlson. I'm with Reference Solutions. You know, our database is roughly 30 years old now. I've been with the company for 15 years, and this is the probably fourth generation of the database. And we have some not only great data that you can get access to, but also some tools that will allow you then to get to that specific information that's most important to you. I am going to go ahead and shut off my camera. I don't want to distract anyone, and I do have a tendency to talk with my hands, so I don't want to interrupt anyone. And the focus is clearly on the database. So let me give you some background on Data Axle Reference Solutions. As I mentioned, the database itself is about 30 years old. Our company is 51 years old. We started in Omaha, Nebraska, gathering at that particular point in time information about businesses. And if you think back to 1972, where would you find information about businesses? Well, it was clearly the phone books, right? Most businesses, certainly not all, but many businesses advertised in the yellow pages. And so we would have those phone books sent from all over the country, and we hired people to do data entry, and we would put those businesses in our database at that point in time. And then businesses would call us to get information about certain types of businesses. Maybe they needed manufacturing businesses. Perhaps they wanted a list of hotels in a particular area. Maybe they needed dry cleaners. Maybe they wanted government offices. So we would capture all of that information and put that in our database. As we matured and as we aged, we started incorporating other processes. And today, as we started to many years ago, we call verify businesses across the United States. The very first occurrence that happens that causes us to begin that process is when those phone books come out. So we still get those phone books sent to us digitally nowadays, thank goodness, and we bump that information up against our current database. Anything that would be a new business that we did not have in the database would get accepted, and anything that was a duplicate would get rejected. So we begin that process and then start calling those businesses to capture, of course, the name of that business, their physical location. Since they answered the phone, we know that phone number is correct. We try and capture the number of employees they have, the line or lines of business that they're in, because they might do 2 or 3 or 4 different types of business. They have one that's primary, and then their secondary lines of business. We'll capture that information. We ask who that owner or manager might be at that business. And then we're grabbing that and updating that record, and we're pushing updates out live in the U.S. business database every week. So Thursday into Friday morning, we're pushing out those updates that we did the week before. So we're constantly updating that universe 52 times a year on the U.S. business database. Now, our historical information, which is being fed from the U.S. business database, this is being updated at the beginning of every new month. Our jobs and internships, that's daily. This is a relationship that we have with Indeed.com. Our U.S. new businesses, those are new business filings that we're getting through Secretary of State's offices, utility hookups, postal processing. So when mail starts to go under that new business name or under that business name to that address, we're capturing it from postal processing as well. We're updating this universe weekly. Typically on those new business filings, we're able to get those verified within 30 to 45 days. Once we have done so, we will give them a full record in the U.S. business database. That partial information that we're getting with those filings will remain in the U.S. New Business module for 1 year from time of entry. But like I say, we're updating that weekly, and as soon as we're able to get that verified, we will give them a full record in the U.S. business database. Then our US healthcare, certainly plenty of businesses want to be able to identify those other businesses like healthcare offices, right? Doctors, dentists. So that information is being updated monthly. Then we also have, as it notes here, I'm on the business databases. These are all business related. I also have a list of consumer databases. So let me select that real quick and introduce to you these three modules that are available there. So we have our standard white pages, which is just that, the standard white pages. That information is being updated monthly. Our US consumer lifestyles information, which we're obtaining from surveys people have completed, perhaps the magazines that they might be having sent to their home, memberships or subscriptions that they may have. So we're capturing that information and updating this monthly. And then last but not least, we have our US new movers, new homeowners. So we're obtaining that information through our license agreement with the United States Postal Service's National Change of Address. We're capturing that information and updating this weekly. So it will show you those people that are new to your community. So if your business requires that you work with consumers, people that are in your community, that would be a terrific opportunity to explore those US new movers, new homeowners. That's updated weekly. And just like with the US new businesses, they will remain in here for 1 year. The nice thing about any of these modules, whether we're speaking of the consumer lifestyles or any of the other consumer modules or the business databases, they all search the same way. Certainly some of the filter headings might be different, but the processes that support them and the production of that data, it's all the same. It's the same process. So once you understand one of these modules, they all pretty much work the same way. So I'll start with the US business database. Simply, we know that that is the one that probably gets the lion's share of attention. Certainly, we know people want to be able to make lists of businesses that they're going to reach out to. Maybe they're going to send them a mail piece, or maybe they're going to call that business to let them know about that product or service that they might be interested in trying to sell that business. Could certainly do that. We know that a lot of times people want to be able to look at that business information because they're thinking of opening a business and they want to understand their competition. Another great way to use the database. Maybe you're looking at a physical location to open a business and you'd like to get some insight about those businesses that are going to be near you. You could certainly do that. Lots of different ways to use this information. I'll go ahead and select the Start Search option, and it's going to bring me to our quick search page. Now, we do have 3 specific file types as it relates to our businesses. I've mentioned our verified businesses. Those are those ones that we call and speak with. We also have unverified businesses, those that we haven't been able to reach for whatever reason, or those that are closed businesses. Whenever I produce results from this quick search page, it's only going to be those that are verified records. I can get to those other record types under advanced search, but whenever I'm in quick search and I'm going to view results, it's only going to be those that are verified. So I could look at one single company record if I'd like to. Maybe I want to look at a competitor. I can look at that competitor's information by simply putting in that company name and then whatever city and state they might be in. I could also look for an executive. Maybe I knew an executive that used to work with a company. I'd heard that they are no longer there, but I don't know where they've gone to. I could certainly try that executive first name, last name to search for that executive. I can look at all businesses in any given city or state. I could even do a reverse phone number lookup. One of the tools that I like to show, especially from the quick search page, and we'll do this, we'll look at Long Beach. So we'll just use Long Beach. Oops, somehow it skipped my N. Long Beach. And I'll go with that. Of course, I have to choose my state. I'll select California. I'll view those results. The system has identified that there are 22,000 plus businesses in Long Beach that are verified records. The tool I want to show you is this charts tool. What this will do is it'll break those businesses down by the type of business that they're in. And we use SIC codes. So that's the Standard Industrial Classification Code. It's an old coding system that, as far as the federal government is concerned, it's been retired for use of the NAICS codes, have replaced those SIC codes. The NAICS, that stands for, all of a sudden, I've lost my train of thought. I'll come back to that in a moment when it comes back to my mind. So the SIC codes, I always encourage users to use the SIC codes over the NAICS codes, simply because we've made them more granular than they ever were when in use by Uncle Sam. So here's my top 7 SIC codes around Long Beach. In that top spot are physicians and surgeons. And that's because they're all 1099 guys and gals. So they're generally, in most communities of size, they're generally at the top of that list. And often is the case where restaurants fall right behind them, as it does in Long Beach. Then we've got attorneys, marriage and family counseling, counselors, nurse practitioners, and physical therapists. So I've got my top 7, but we don't stop there. We do give you a full report. Notice it's 92 pages in length. We'll always give you that primary SIC code that business is under, the description for that primary SIC code, and then the number of records that apply. And when I say primary SIC code, think of a business like Walmart. So Walmart has, as their primary SIC code, they're under department store, because they have all of those various departments under that one roof, right? They have grocery, they have automotive, they have pharmacy, etc. So we'll always give you that business's primary, along with that description and those number of records. And know that even when you're in these records, maybe someone has a product that they would like to be able to sell into these beauty salons. You could click on that number of 313 and it will take you right to that audience group of those particular beauty salons. So you can even move around to get to certain kinds of records when you're in the chart feature. So we'll give you that breakdown. We'll also allow you to switch it up to to the zip codes if you would like to. Certainly, we have those sales volumes. And please understand, when we're talking about sales volumes, especially with those private businesses, that's not a question that we ask them when we make that phone call. We're modeling that information, and we use information like the number of employees that they have, the type of business or types of business that they're in, how long they've been in business, because there's value associated with that kind of consistency. Also, physically where those businesses are located, because we're going to allow for differences with taxes and payroll kinds of things. as well as information that we get through the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So just realize that if it's a private company, that sales volume is always modeled. If it's a publicly traded company, of course, we're getting that from their 10K report. We also ask, and we'll always present it to you in a similar fashion with those ranges. We also ask those businesses how many employees they have. About 72% of those businesses will give us an exact number. Those that don't, we look at their peers based on that SIC code that they're under, and then we'll apply a range. So we'll look at those peers and see what kind of that average is and apply that in a range. So no, you'll always be able to get to all of that information. I'll show you what I'm referring to. I'm going to revise this search because it's one thing to do a search from the quick search page. Certainly something quite different when I go to advanced search, because we're going to give you many more filters that you could apply in order to get to a very specific group of types of businesses. Advanced search will take me there. Additional filters. This is the back door into advanced search. So either one, when you click on it, it will then produce for you this next page. So under this, I always have where I could search by company name. The difference being what I could do in quick search is only look at one company by name. If I select this option from advanced search, I can put in as many companies as I'd like by name and then select my geography. So if I wanted IBM, I could do that. If I wanted Delta, I could add that company. I can add as many companies as I'd like, and then I can select the geography that makes sense for me. Otherwise, you don't even have to select company name because we'll always give you that. The same thing would be true with this executive information. We'll always give that to you. However, maybe there are cases when people want to be able to identify just businesses using a certain executive title. As you can see, you could get Chief Executive Officer. If that were important to you, you could drive that in. You'll skip over then those records where maybe we weren't able to get a title or a title that doesn't fit what you want to see with an executive. So if CEO is important to you, you could drive that in. You can select as many of these as you'd like, or you don't have to select anything because we'll always give you that information as well. Maybe you only want records with an owner present. You can key that in, select it, add it to the list. Maybe you don't want Chief Executive Officer at all, only owners. Bingo, you can do that. We give you that option. So know that that's available. And we'll always give you this otherwise. Business type. Most people will search the database by simply keying in an example of the type of business they would like to see. Maybe they just want dry cleaners. Could certainly always do that and just get those if that were what was important to you. There's my SIC code for all dry cleaners. When Uncle Sam was managing these SIC codes, they were only a 4-digit number at maximum length. We've added the additional 2 digits to that to give it a 6-digit at a minimum length and a 9-digit at a maximum length. So we've made it much more granular than it ever was before. So there's my dry cleaners. I've selected it. Then it's a matter of selecting whatever geography. Maybe it's important that that business be of a certain size related to the number of employees or the sales volume. Otherwise, we're going to give you that information based on whatever geography you selected. And you can select as many geographies as you'd like anywhere in the United States. So keyword is certainly one way to search the database. I do know that in some cases, people prefer to use the major industry group. This is just using the SIC codes. So it gives you this breakdown just as Uncle Sam had managed these codes all those years ago. It begins with a two-digit two-digit SIC code. So if we go under construction, I've got 15, 16, and 17. If I would like to see the definition for each of those codes, I can select that plus symbol, and it then provides for me that definition. If I wanted something to do with general contractors, I can click that plus symbol again, and it opens up that next category. This was as granular, those 4 digits, as Uncle Sam had produced. If I needed to be more specific, though, I can click that plus symbol against any of these, open that section up, and look at how much more granular I can get. So if I only wanted companies that do water damage restoration for residential locations, I could certainly make that my selection and forego all those others. This can be extremely helpful, and some people really like this kind of stair-step approach to being able to access that information. So know you can use either the keyword or the major industry group in order to get the kinds of results that you need. Geography speaks for itself. I will show you this map tool. This is awfully popular, especially if your particular geography isn't necessarily definable by the city limits or a zip code or even an area code. You could use that map tool and be able to look at a particular area how you need to see it, not how it's presented to you through any of these other selections. Phone speaks for itself. We'll always produce that phone information for you. Maybe you want to look for a company by a phone number. You could certainly do that. Business size, I already mentioned that, but again, those number of employees, if that's an important filter that you would want to include, you can choose to do so. We give you these various ranges, and you can select any of those ranges that make sense to you. Same thing would be true with sales volume. So if that's a filter you need to employ, certainly feel free to do so. Ownership, we give you lots of ways to look at ownership, certainly public or private. If you need to find businesses that are single location businesses, that would be found under headquarters and branch. You can open that up, and it gives you that headquarters, that branch, the option to look at subsidiaries or those single locations. I know plenty of users need to be able to look at businesses based on that single location. So if that's important to you, know you can get to that under ownership. We do have those home-based businesses, so if that were important to you, know you could certainly do that as well. We give you 2 options when you select that, either only looking at those businesses that are home-based, or you could also exclude those. And we'll always tell you if it's a home-based business or not. So that'll be in every record. We also give you lots of ways that you can use that financial data to drive in those kinds of records that are important to you. Just like with the sales volume, if we're talking about a private company, business expenditures is also modeled. We give you some special selections. So if you wanted only companies with a web address, bingo, you could do that. Or you could choose to exclude those that don't have that web address. Another way to look at that. We do give you years in the database or year established. Now, year established is not 100% fill rate. So I always encourage people, especially if they're looking for newer businesses that have been added in a particular community, use years in the database. When you select that, it will give you that 1 through 14, and then we give you 15 plus. So if you're looking for newer businesses, maybe you don't want them to be so new. Maybe you don't want a business that's a year old or even 2 years old, but you would like to see them that have been open for at least 3 to 5 years. You could make that your selection and then produce whatever geography is important. Certainly, it could be based on a type of business as well. Up to you. You can apply these filters any way that they make sense for the kinds of results you'd like to produce. So we give you those special selects. I do like to point out these professionals, all or one. We saw when we looked at Long Beach that there were a lot of physicians and surgeons, right? Dentists, etc. If you wanted to produce a list, but you didn't necessarily want every attorney in an office, but rather one primary contact, you can select those professionals and change that from all to one. You'll drive in fewer records ultimately. And if you intend on doing a mailer, which we know a lot of people do, if you're intending on doing a mailer, then you won't be receiving as many records. So obviously you won't have to spend quite so much on that mailing campaign that you're doing. So know that that's available to you. And then we give you a variety of ways that you can choose to omit businesses. Now, when you may or may not have seen when I had the full city list up in the chart, there were ATM machines. I know that a lot of times people don't necessarily want to include ATMs. So you can choose to omit a keyword as well. So if I don't want those ATMs, I can search for that, those automated teller machines. There's that SIC code for all those automated teller machines. I can click on that, select it, and then as long as I've left that alone, and I search in a particular geography for businesses, I'll never see those automated teller machines. We also know that a lot of times people may not want kiosks. So you could search for kiosks as well and omit those. You can omit any kind of business. Maybe you don't want to include government offices. You could choose to omit those. Just depends on what your need might be. So we do have retail, not-for-profit, as well as government offices listed in the database. And notice I'm only looking at those verified records. I could include those unverified records. If you're using the database as a sales tool, you may well want to check those unverifieds from time to time. Just because we weren't successful reaching them doesn't mean that they don't exist within your community. And then, of course, we have our closed records. And some people want to see businesses that have recently closed, right? Maybe they didn't know that business had closed. They could learn that. So certainly this universe here of almost 17 million businesses, those are my verified records. So we're going to do a search. Let's imagine that you needed to find some restaurants. I like to use restaurants because it allows me to show you some of the available tools as well. So maybe you had a product that you wanted to be able to sell into restaurants. You can type that in. Notice it's come up on my list there, but simply because I do that search frequently. Once you have clicked on that search option, it's going to pull up. There's my listing for all restaurants. So this would be fast food as well as fine dining, right? And notice, I will scroll through this list a bit here. I want to show you, there's my 6-digit SIC code. Remember, we added those additional 2. We also give you a 7-digit, and it's right here. So if you wanted certain types of restaurants, maybe you wanted steakhouses or German restaurants. Maybe you wanted Jamaican restaurants. You could use that 7-digit SIC code To get to just those Hawaiian restaurants, this is inclusive of all restaurants. This would allow you to see those more specifically. And if you needed certain chains of restaurants, we now give you that 9-digit SIC code that you could use to find those specific kinds of chain restaurants. So either way, I can drive in those results that are most important to me. I'm going to look at all of the restaurants across the city. So I'll select the city. I can do any city in the United States. We're just going to go with Long Beach, of course, in this case. And just put in the city name and select go. Don't do the state, just do the city name. Then it pulls up all of the Long Beaches. There's my Long Beach, California. I can click on that, add it. Maybe there were a neighboring community to Long Beach that I also wanted to look at. I could add it next and then search for it. You can do that based on city. I could certainly always do that if I wanted to include just Long Beach, but then I wanted to look at all businesses in Orange County that were restaurants. I could do that as well. So you get to be the one that decides how this ultimately will look. So I've got Long Beach. I'm looking at all restaurants. I have a total of those verified businesses of 1,238. Now I'm searching all SIC codes. At the top, I had mentioned that a lot of times businesses will have 1, 2, 3 SIC codes under their purviews, right? So if I switch this up to primary only, in other words, they have to be a restaurant first, watch what happens to my number. So 998. I took out businesses, for example, like bowling alleys. Certainly every bowling alley I've ever been in has a little restaurant in there, but that's not why they're in business. They're in business because they're a bowling alley. So I'm going to look at that list. I can always chart this list. And since I did it based on your city, the very first option I get to look at it is based on the zip code. So I could certainly, I've got my top 7 zip codes in the area. Then I have a full report down below. So no, you can always look at that. And if I wanted this group of 173 restaurants in that particular zip code, I could just click on it. I could also look at it from that sales volume standpoint or those number of employees. By the way, all of this is printable or it could be made part of a PowerPoint presentation. So know that we give you that kind of access. I also have the ability to put this on our heat map. It's a density map. This will help you understand where those businesses are located across Long Beach. So where you see these red areas, there are lots of restaurants in those areas, yellow fewer, green even less. And of course, where there's any gaps, there aren't restaurants in those areas. Truly just restaurants in those areas. And then, of course, we'll give you that breakdown based on those zip codes as well. Again, I can get to any of these numbers. If I want to get to that group of 143, I can do that. Let's go to our results, though. Let's take a look at that. So I have all of these records page by page, and I can change pages by simply using that toggle at the bottom of the page or at the top of the page. I can get to that next group. You'll always know the number of downloads that are available to you are in this black section right down here at the very bottom. So it says 250 downloads or prints, and it says per search. It's per download event. So if I wanted to download all 250 records at once, I do need to select this box next to company name. And then I need to advance to the next page. I did not do page number 1, by the way, so I can go to page number 11, but I'm not going to go quite that far. You can see I'm already at 125. When I'm ready, I can select to download that information. I could certainly print that off, but if I would like to download that, which many people do, I'll be taken to this next page. Comma delimited is the most popular because it's mailing label friendly. Still puts it into a form of Excel. If the summary includes enough information, meaning the name of that restaurant, their physical address, their phone number, we'll even give you that manager's name or that owner's name and title, along with number of employees, sales volume, line of business. All of that will be included in this download. So let me select that. It's already done. And here's that download available then to you. So I can download as many of these business records as I'd like based on 250 at a time. So that's 10 total pages at a time that I could select and download. When I'm ready to, and especially if you want to save this all in one document, my Excel document here is static. You can't add more information to my page, but you could if you opened up your own version of Excel and did a copy and paste from mine into your own. That would allow you to keep adding to that one document so you didn't have to save independent pages. If that's what you want to do, you would minimize yours after you've done that copy and paste. You would come back here, close mine. It will always leave you then on this instructional page. You simply select the word back. And you do need to clear out these check marks. Otherwise, you'll produce the same records. And you always want to remember what page you left off on. So you can revise the search. It doesn't forget how you built this search. You can view your results. It brings you back to page 1. You would just type in this case, page 7. And then you can start selecting more pages for download. So it really is that easy as that in order to be able to get all those records. And granted, I didn't do a group of 250. I certainly could have. I'm going to go back here a couple of pages. And I do want to show you, I happen to notice this on page 2, you do have Arby's. I like to use Arby's as an example. People are often surprised at just how big a company Arby's is a part of. And when I say the company and being a part of, we do have, and it says it right here at the very top, I have that corporate tree structure. The up arrow will take you to one record and one record only. That would either be the subsidiary responsible for Arby's, and if there weren't, then it would take you to the ultimate parent. This will show you their entire organizational structure. So if you needed that kind of business intelligence, you've got it. So here's my Arby's in Long Beach. They report up to this Arby's restaurant group out of Atlanta, Georgia, but they're ultimately owned by this Rourke Capital Group. It's a private equity firm, which is also out of Atlanta. They have 45 subsidiaries. I can tell you, I was in these records last week. There were only 43, so we've added 2 more since I was last in there last week. Some 40,000 plus branches. We do have a legend that runs across the top here. So if you wondered what PV stood for, that would be a private company. If you want to see these other subsidiaries, you simply collapse or close this one, and there they are. So I'm sure as you look at that list, you're seeing a number of businesses that are, in fact, in your community. They just added Dunkin' Donuts to their portfolio, and that was in October of 2020. They just added this business at the very bottom here, Two Men in a Truck. They just added them 7 months ago. So as we have things that change within these businesses, we have people back in the office that are responsible for watching these larger companies so that we can update this information accordingly. So know you always have information like this. If you wanted to get into just these Carl Jr.'s restaurants, you can click on that subsidiary and open that all up. So it just depends on how you need to use this kind of insight. I can always get back to my original list. And when I open up the Arby's record, this is the information that you'll find in these records. So it'll always produce for you, at least initially, and I apologize for my internet. It's a little slow here. We will always provide to you that location information first. So there's that information on where Arby's is located, their phone information, website, those social links. We also have access to that corporate tree information inside the record as well. So you can access it either way. Then we have some of those job listings, that industry profile. So there's that SIC code that drove in all those restaurants. If you were ever going to use an SIC code in order to reverse engineer a search, don't include the dash, just the 581208. Don't include the dash. And then you can produce just businesses based on that. Maybe you're going to look up a business to see what their primary SIC code is. You could do that and then produce a much larger group if you would like to. We do have their business profile in this case. So when they opened up 1964, kind of what they're about. Of course, we know they have curly fries. I can also get to Google Maps because we have the latitude and longitude embedded in here. So I can always identify where those businesses are at. And you can print this off if need be. Now, here are those business demographics, and this is valuable insight. Number one, I know how many employees they have. So we last updated them in May of 22. We do that annually. So we'll start calling this business now to get them updated again for 2023. When we called them, they told us they had 23 employees. And remember, that number goes into the modeling for this sales number. So that's a valuable number for us. We've had them in our database for 40 years. They've been around for a while, right? There's that latitude and longitude I've mentioned. We have their hours of operation, that management directory. Company news. This is where I was at when I noticed that Dunkin' Donuts was being acquired by Rourke Capital. So you can get to these articles if you'd like to. We get this through Bing, and it's loaded as Bing gets this insight from these various sources. You can see this one came through KC, this one through Yahoo. We'll always give you that. Of course, there is no stock data because we know this is a private company. But even if this were a publicly traded company, we would not have stock data on a branch. It would only be on that parent company. Then we've got some of those business expenditures, again, because this is private, this is modeled information. Then we've got some sales volumes and employment sizes. We also have those historical records in here. Notice this goes back to 2003. I'm going to show you something with that. I'll select this year of 2010. So I'm clicking on that business name for 2010. It brings me to this slide, which is showing that I am on that record for 2010. Notice this does go back to 1997. That's when we began keeping track of these businesses from a historical perspective. Somebody had the bright idea back then, hey, we should be retaining this information. That's when we started in 1997. This slide, by the way, is active, so I can go back in time or I could go forwards in time up to 22, right? So it just depends on what I would like to do. I can always get back to my original record, which is here, and then I have 3 additional sections. We have UCC filings, which would mean if this business has taken out a loan and put something up as collateral, that would be captured there. Then I have the nearby businesses, again, because we have that latitude and longitude available. And then lastly, I have a competitors report. So those other restaurants, I'll always have that. If somebody wanted to be able to get into this Jack in the Box record, you could click on that and it would take you to their record. So it just depends on what you might need for information about these businesses in that particular area, or in this case, a competitor. Now, we won't give competitors at all if it's a nonprofit, if it's a church, if it's a government agency. We wouldn't have competitors listed for those types of businesses. So know you can always get to this information, this depth and level of information, whether we're talking about businesses and or even our consumer information, of which I want to show you a little bit of that now before our hour expires. So I'm simply going to come here and select home. It will bring me back to that page that we began on to look at these business records. I'm going to select the consumer databases. It opens up this new page with all of our consumer related databases. I'm going to open up the U.S. consumer and lifestyles information. So as I mentioned, we're getting this from surveys people have completed. Now, I was not in this database myself when I first moved back into Omaha. At that time, I had a dog, and he became, he developed a sensitive stomach, and he couldn't palate the dog food that I was feeding him. My veterinarian suggested that I go to Petco or a PetSmart, if there were one near me, and try some different products, all meat products, or all fish products, or all poultry products. I could find him one of those types of products, cut out all those grains and additional additives that are included in dog food, and he'd probably be fine. Sure enough, within a couple of months, I ended up signing up for a PALS membership through Petco, and I was identified as a dog lover because of my activity, the frequency at which I was purchasing those dog products. And by the way, he thought he was a horse. At least that's how he ate. So I fell in the database as a pet lover of specifically dogs. So notice we do have a scoring system that takes place here. It's 0 through 9. So if someone's a 0, it means they really just have no interest in whatever category may have been selected. If they're a 9, it means they're heavily interested in that particular category, and they'll show up in a search. So if we were looking for just dog lovers, we'll always produce results of those people who score at least a 6 or higher, 6 through 9. So I could do Long Beach, for example. I'll put in my Long Beach. Oh, I keep selecting that R in there. There's my Long Beach, California, just like I did in the business database. Now, I'm going to tell the system I only want to see one record per household. I don't want three names at the same address, right? I just want one record. And I'm looking at those folks that are dog lovers. Now, I could choose to include estimated home income. Maybe that's important. Maybe I want to market my new dog boutique to some folks, but I obviously don't want to market to folks that wouldn't be able to necessarily afford my products that I'm selling in my dog boutique. So I could certainly always consider using this home income, which we're getting that home income and home value through the Census Bureau. So we'll always overlay that. Let me show you what those records would look like. So as it relates to dog lovers, one per in Long Beach, I have 3,771 households that fall in this group of 6 through 9. I can view those results. Now notice the very first thing that we share here is that the telephone numbers, which are displayed, not nearly as many as there used to be when people had landlines, but it does state telephone numbers displayed may be on the do not call list and should not be used for phone solicitation. Ultimately, you're responsible for the compliance with that regarding federal, state, and your local laws. So with that said, you can get a clean list. You can hire us to do that, or you could download this information, send it to the do not call registry. Of course, they would charge you as well, but then they would send you back a clean list that you could call against if you were interested in calling. If you're interested in mailing, you could certainly download this information and put together a mailer and send that to them. I want to show you what this information is going to look like. Of course, we're going to have that name and address, phone number, etc. Now I can open that record up and there it comes. So I've had that address information. We're not certain about this information. Been in this home for a while. There's some of that census information that we're obtaining, and then we overlay this information against that. And then there are those lifestyle characteristics. The only reason this record came in is because of their interest in dogs. So know that that's how each and every one of those records is set up. And I have that same capability as it relates to charting this information. First thing it will look at is home value. You could always switch it up to that home income, certainly, or zip codes, up to you. And you can always download that just like I showed you related to those business records. I see that you have a question. I don't know. Oh, you're probably giving me that it's noon on my time. I will go right back home here. Know that you can get access to the Reference Solutions database through the Long Beach Public Library anytime you would like, 24/7. We also have lots of folks that cover. In fact, our 800 number is right there if you need any assistance. Nicole, any final comments?
No, that was really great, Bill. And actually, I think Jaime was, I think the hand is to slow down, but I think we're wrapped up. Um, uh, and I just realized that I am not sure if I mentioned if anyone had any questions, you can either enter it into the chat or feel free to unmute yourself if you can. because we can do that for a few minutes.
Absolutely. I am happy to do so.
Okay, well, no worries if not. But that about wraps up the workshop. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself. Um, I will go ahead and put my email in the follow-up with the recording, as well as Bill's email, in case you have any questions for us about how to use reference solutions.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for that recording.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.